All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, it was going to be hard for quarterback Zach Wilson, and it is going to be hard for Zach Wilson to continue his NFL career with the New York Jets after he was benched last week. And yesterday's game, in my opinion, might have been the coup de grace because you look at it, the Jets had their way with the Chicago Bears yesterday en route to the 31 to 10 win with Mike White inserted as the team's new starting quarterback. White was very efficient, and of course, in doing so, he earned the praises of Jets head coach Robert Saleh as he was 22 of 28 passing for 315 with 3 TDs and no interceptions. Now, aside from White's efficiency, and I talked about this yesterday, the biggest thing for me was how this Jets team responded to White in the lineup. And it wasn't just the offense, it was the defense and the special teams. And you're talking about this Jets defense. It's one of the better defenses in the NFL. They know how to get after opponents. They put pressure with their front with their defensive line on quarterbacks. They have solid coverage in the back end, and they have some good linebackers as well. And they could shut down most teams in the NFL. But you look at it, it's a little bit easier for you as a defense to go out there and do your job when you know that you have an offense that's going to be able to score some points and you don't have to worry about saying, okay, we need to hold this team to 13 points or less in order to go out there and win. That was not the case yesterday. And it was a collective effort by everybody involved, everybody who put on a black uniform yesterday for gangrene, okay, obviously. But nonetheless, you know what? They went out there and took care of their business. And for me, even though the Jets head coach Robert Saleh left the door open for Wilson to reclaim his job, in my opinion, it looks very bleak now. Aside from what Mike White did yesterday in the game, and aside from what the Jets did overall, you look at Wilson yesterday, his body language. He was on the sideline, he had his sweats on, obviously the towel in the rainy conditions at MetLife Stadium, but he just seemed aloof out there in the rain, standing away from his teammates and the other quarterbacks, talking when White came to the sideline. Wilson really wasn't a part of that. And then immediately leaving the field after the game and then not being around in the locker room afterwards. For me, it's one of those where adversity builds character. And more than ever, this is when the Jets needed to see the leadership ability that Wilson has. Obviously, he was inactive yesterday for the game, but that's the point where you know what, you cheer up your teammates, you cheer up your fellow quarterback. You're still in the quarterback huddle when they're going over tendencies from the opposing defenses, looking at the game tape, if you will, in game. These type of moments. This is when you show that you are a leader. And unfortunately for Wilson, he didn't answer that challenge yesterday as the third string quarterback, of course, in this case, who was inactive. Now, again, the Jets have a different vibe, or they had a different vibe yesterday with Mike White at quarterback. But at the end of the day, and in my opinion, I feel like Mike White is one of the guys and Zach Wilson isn't. And, of course, the quarterback is the unofficial leader of the team, but you still got to go out there and be one of the guys. They have to know that you're with them in order for them to go to bat for you, in order for them to go to battle with you. And it just doesn't seem like Zach Wilson had that effect on his team, but it's something I do feel that Mike White has. And of course, the decision to bench Zach Wilson wasn't, a spur of the moment thing. I'm sure that the Jets brass got together. Wouldn't surprise me, if, some of the team, maybe like if the Jets have a leadership committee on their team, like some teams do in the NFL, and said, hey, going to the coaches, like, you know what, this guy's not getting it done, X, Y, and Z. But the bottom line is Robert Saleh, obviously the Jets head coach, he knows the tenor of his locker room, and he's going to go out there and do what he feels is best for the team, and at least for one game. Obviously, he made the right move. But for me, in my opinion, and some people might agree with me, some people might not. I might be wrong on this, I might be right. It's all good. But I think at this point, a change of scenery is needed for Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson is only 23 years old, and his career, I do feel, can be revitalized, but just not in New York. I really feel that Wilson needs to go someplace and be a backup and hone his skills that the Jets coaches talked about last week that he needs to work on. But he needs to do it under an offensive minded coach, and on top of that he needs to find some coaches that are quote unquote quarterback gurus, whether that's the offensive coordinator, the quarterback coach, or even the head coach himself. But he needs, some real tutelage, under his belt, before he goes back out there and attempts to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. He has the tools. He has a very strong arm. He does have to work on his mechanics. But for me, this is what happens for several reasons. And I'm not going to, like I talked about it the other day when the Jets announced that they were benching Zach Wilson. I don't feel that all of this is on Zach Wilson. I put a lot of this on the New York Jets as well. But this is what happens when teams draft some of these kids, out of college early on in the draft, and they throw them to the wolves right away. Zach Wilson was a second overall pick, and I know that like teams nowadays, especially at the quarterback position, they want to put guys out there immediately in order to see what they have or don't have. But at the end of the day, everybody is not capable of just making the jump from college to the pros and being a starter immediately. This is why I've always been a fan of teams getting a veteran quarterback, letting that veteran quarterback at least start half of the games for that specific quarterback's rookie season. Give him an opportunity to catch up to game speed, give him an opportunity to study, give him an opportunity to work on mechanics, work on intangibles X, Y, and Z. Wilson never had that opportunity because the Jets threw him to the wolves. And again, I think, like even the Jets, they're basically going around it and saying it, but he's lost his confidence. And I think he just needs to get that confidence back. He needs to get that swagger back. But I don't think that opportunity should come in New York, because the bottom line is he's going to be under the microscope from both the fans and the media. And anytime he has a slightest hiccup, of course, the fans and the media are going to be like, oh no, here we go again. Everybody is not built mentally to play in the New York market. And, there are certain sports markets in the United States where it's a little bit tougher on pro athletes. New York is definitely one, Boston, Philadelphia. Chicago is also a tough place. You can make the case for Dallas, especially with the Dallas Cowboys, and Los Angeles, especially if you're playing for the Dodgers or the Lakers. But at the end of the day, everybody is not built to play in New York. It takes a very special person. You think about the New York Giants and when they drafted Eli Manning, or when they traded for Eli Manning, and it was a scenario where, a lot of people that follow the Giants and a lot of people in general, football fans, football writers, whomever, they expected Eli to come out and be Peyton right away. Eli was not Peyton, and Eli never was Peyton, but he had the mentality, he had the moxie to allow things to never get to him. Just have it just be like water coming off of a duck's back. Consistently went back out there, took care of his business. And, a lot of his former teammates would always talk about Eli Manning and say, you know what, you never knew if the guy was up or down. That's the type of person he was emotionally. And of course, it paid off because he was unflappable. And he was a big reason why the Giants won a pair of Super Bowls on his watch. But with that said, everybody is not equipped to be a pro athlete in the New York media market, especially a quarterback, because the fan base and the media, they're always going to be on you. And of course, in the case from Zach Wilson following the press conference last week against the New England Patriots, it was kind of like he just immediately became public enemy number one. And even with that said, I always feel like pro days in college are so overrated, because the Jets fell in love with what Zach Wilson did at his pro day at BYU. And again, anybody can look good when they're throwing scripted routes on an indoor field, and you're just in shorts and a t-shirt, and it's just you and your receivers out there, no rushers, no offensive line, no audibling, nothing. anybody can go out there and look good. And of course, you're supposed to make all your throws. And that's basically what Zach Wilson did. The Jets drank the Kool-Aid. And at the end of the day, it sooner rather than later, they realized, you know what, this kid doesn't have it, at least for right now, to lead this team. Now, for me, following everything, and I mean everything that has transpired in the last 8 days, I don't see how the Jets can go back to Wilson at any point ever. I just really don't. That's just my opinion. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see how this plays out for all parties involved. Now, of course, the question would be, will the Jets or should the Jets trade Wilson? I think they should. You're not going to get a first round pick back for him at this point, but I think for all parties involved, I think the Jets need to go in a different direction at quarterback next year, whether that's Mike White or whether that's somebody else. I know they invested a lot in taking him second overall, but it's the second time in less than 5 years that they've obviously missed on taking a quarterback so early in the draft, just like they did with Sam Darnold a couple of years ago. But make no mistake about it, I just think that his future, Zach Wilson, is definitely not in New York City. I think he needs to go to a smaller market, be with a quarterback coach who can, get things straightened out for him and give him the opportunity to revitalize his career. And that definitely ain't going to happen with the Jets. Taking, honestly, it's not just taking, using a first round pick, especially in the top 10, especially in the top five, like the Jets did, it's all well and good on paper until you make the decision at the draft. And the reason why I say that is because if you are a team and you miss on that first round pick early on, it can really set your franchise back several years. Right now, the Jets have a championship defense. Robert Sala sees that, and he knows that this team has a potential to make the playoffs, but they just cannot do it with Zach Wilson at quarterback. And even in the games that Zach Wilson played this year, you really can't make the case that the Jets won any of those contests because of what Zach Wilson did. It's not like he ever put this team on his back. So at the end of the day, he has the physical tools to be the quarterback, but at the end of the day, he just doesn't have the intangibles needed to be a leader of men at this point of his career. Again, he's only 23 years old. I think that he can turn things around and be a solid NFL quarterback, just not with gangrene. So let's just see how things work out going forward for the Jets, for Zach Wilson, Mike White, and everybody else involved. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.